So I've just finished the Dynasty Warriors Origins demo and I've got a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys, and I'm also really interested to see what you guys think as well. So any thoughts you have, any opinions, let us know down in the comments below. I'd love to have a discussion and see what you liked, what you didn't like about it. So I'm a pretty big Dynasty Warriors fan, all the way back to the second game on the PS2. I always remember when I first saw this game, I was blown away. Like, thinking about a PS2, how can a PS2 have that many enemies on screen, like this big battlefield? And although Dynasty Warriors 2 probably hasn't aged the best, at the time it was pretty revolutionary. And I believe these games were supposed to be like budget priced games. They were never really meant to be you know, like a big name, but I think they've gained a lot of fans over the years. Definitely gained a lot of hate as well. It's a bit of a Marmite game, you know, you love it or you hate it. A lot of people think it's a repetitive game where you just bash square all the time, and you know, I think over the years it's sort of developed a bit more control wise, and that's something that even in Origins I noticed they've really took it one step forward and tried to improve the controls. So, you know, I've not played all of the spin-offs. You know, I haven't really touched the Zelda games they made or the Fire Emblem games, and there's so many spin-offs now, but they've probably took a lot of lessons that they've learned from these other spin-offs and brought it in to Dynasty Warriors. So my main knowledge is basically just all the Dynasty Warriors up until 9, and you know, the less said about 9 the better. I think that's the reason we have the game we have now with Origins. So just going off like my first impressions when I loaded up the game, it was fantastic to see that they've brought back the sort of original kind of levels, this sort of closed battlefield. It's no longer an open world game, thank God. I feel like Dynasty Warriors 9, you know, it's not the worst game in the world, but when all the battles are on the same big bland map over and over and over again, it gets very boring, very repetitive, and you know, I'm a Dynasty Warriors fan, so repetition doesn't really faze me that much. But yeah, 9 was quite poor, and so it's nice to see they've returned to the more structured strategic battles of the past. So that's already a plus point going towards it. You know, looking at the graphics, so I think this is a next gen exclusive. I don't believe you can get this on the PS4. So the graphics are pretty good. I mean, Dynasty Warriors isn't really known for graphics, and I think there's a bit of a trade-off, because when you have that many enemies on screen, I don't really think you can push the graphics like too much. So they have to have a little bit of, you know, give and take there. But I think that the graphics overall look really good, especially if you compare with Dynasty Warriors 9, the last game. I think it's a step up, you know, considering everything looks great. But also the first thing I noticed is that the game feels a little bit heavier to play, a little heavier to control, and I can't quite put my finger on if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because normally in Dynasty Warriors it's very fluid, sort of free-flowing combat, you know, almost very arcadey, and it's still very arcadey, but I feel like they've tightened it up a little bit. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's a good thing because it is a bit tighter, you know, there's a bit more to it, or if it's a bad thing because it is trying to do something a little different. But you know, overall I still felt like it controlled well, it's just different. So if you're a Dynasty Warriors fan, you'll definitely notice the difference, but whereas if you're new, you'll probably not, and you'll think this is perfectly fine. So it's not really an issue, it's just something I thought I would bring up. But everything's what you would expect. You've got your regular square attacks, you can combine them with your triangle attacks, which is like your combos, your heavier kind of attacks. You've got your Mushu with circle, all the traditional kind of stuff. You can command a little battalion, you have a little group of soldiers that you can control when they have like a few different moves. I don't think that's unique to this game. I'm sure I've seen it in another game before. I'm not even sure if it was Dynasty Warriors 9, but you can basically command them to like charge at the enemy or fire arrows or, you know, do whatever you want them to do. So it's a nice little extra, especially when you're fighting against the big armies. It's nice to have like a little squad with you, because normally when you play the Dynasty Warriors games, there's always like a general or some kind of guy that you need to beat, and he always has a little army, you know, around him. Whereas you never really had that as a playable character. You were just always alone. So it's nice that they've kind of made it consistent, and you have the same sort of group of troops that you can command. But it's not a feature I really used, but it's still kind of cool that it's still there. And the game tracks how many of them survived at the end of the battle. So obviously the better you do, the less people die, and you know, I guess that makes you feel better. I don't know. But the other moves you've got your sort of like special moves. They're tagged to like, you hold R1, you press like square, triangle, circle and X, and you can do various different special moves, which are quite good. And these can all be customized in the menu. You can change it up, no doubt you'll unlock more that you can use. So it's nice to have a little bit more options to choose from, and this sort of leads me in to the combat with the more mini boss kind of characters, you know, the generals that you kind of fight across the battlefield. Because when you fight the cannon fodder enemies, it doesn't really matter, you can do whatever you want against them. But when you fight the more tougher enemies, the commanders, etc., I feel like they've beefed this part of the game up, because normally in Dynasty Warriors you come up against these bigger enemies and they basically just have a bigger health bar, and you just need to be a little bit more careful. Now it feels like you're having a proper duel with them, so they've really put an emphasis on blocking. So there's like, I think there's at least 3 different attacks that you need to watch out for. So you've got the standard attacks that if you time it right, you can parry it and you can stun your opponent. There's another, I think it's like a sort of yellowy kind of glow, where you can use a special move. I think for me it was R1 and circle, and it basically cancels their special that they were charging up, and again you can parry them. And then there's the red one, which is basically you can't block this, so you have to dodge. So now there's actually a dodge button in Dynasty Warriors. I don't believe there ever was before. So you just press R2, you dodge out the way, and again, if you time it perfectly, you get a little bit of a bonus. So they've got all the different kinds of blocking and parrying, they've got the dodge, they've got cancelling out their special moves with your special moves. So it feels like there's a little bit more of a system going on. And they don't just have a health bar, they also have like an armor bar. It's sort of like you need to sort of break it down with your special moves before you can start to take down their health. And it's best to stun the enemies as well, I think, because if you stun them you can do more damage and you can take off more armor. So I really like that component of it. It means that when you fight against these tougher enemies, it really feels like you're in a proper fight, you know, you're not just fighting a slightly tougher enemy with more health. They actually have more to them, more to the combat, so it adds a little more depth to the combat, which I really liked. Apart from that, there's near the end of the demo, you basically come up against like this giant wave of soldiers, and I'm going to give a criticism first, because what I noticed was the camera felt maybe a little too close to the character, which it's not really that much of a problem when you're playing through most of the level, but once you start to get into parts where there's just soldiers everywhere, especially at the end, it was like a flood of rats all over the screen, and I couldn't really see what I was doing, I couldn't really see the enemy that I was fighting, everything was just a big mess. So it's a little bit confusing, it's a little bit jarring, you know. I don't think it was impossible to know what I was doing, but it's just something I noticed, like the camera, and you just get so distracted with how many troops are on the screen. But we're not really used to that many soldiers on screen, you know. There's always been a lot of soldiers, but this Origins game is really making a point of adding, you know, as many as they possibly can, and no doubt that's because it's a next gen game, so they're really trying to push the boat out. with just throwing as many soldiers and as many things on screen as they possibly can. So, you know, naturally that's going to be a consequence of that. You know, it's really cool to see all these waves of troops going at it, but at the same time, once you're amongst that, it can get a little bit, you know, distracting. So that was the only thing that kind of bugged me about it. But it's not the worst thing ever. Like, you can get over it. That was like my first time playing the game, so I'm sure like once I do all the other maps, I'll get used to it and it won't be a problem anymore. One of the other things I'll say about the combat as well, which I didn't really notice until the end of the demo, was that sometimes the officers, these commander guys, they can actually challenge you to a one-on-one duel. And so basically all the troops, they just sort of circle around you to make it like a little arena on the battlefield, and then you just fight them one-on-one. So there's no other distractions, it's just you and the other officer. And the goal was basically just who can get to like a certain amount of hits first, and it's like a bar that kind of goes left and right. So yeah, you're using the same kind of thing. You're trying to stun them, you're trying to dodge them, parry them, put in as many hits as you can. It's the exact same, just that it's more focused, and it might be like a little gimmick, but I still thought it was pretty cool. Like, you can just jump into a duel, and especially if you're going to fight some of the bigger characters, I think having these one-on-one fights would be really interesting, cinematic wise as well. So other than that, let me think. So the combat I was fairly impressed with, the visuals fairly impressed with as well. I really liked how the maps worked. One other feature is that you can sort of tag team with one of the other Dynasty warriors, like Dune. That's who I chose. There's like, I think you can partner up with Guan Yu, and there's another one. There's a female character, I'm forgetting her name. She uses like dual rings. She's part of the Wu clan, so you can choose her as well. And basically it's like at some point you can hold the touchpad and then you can take control of that character, and they're almost like a super hero, you know, a super character. It's almost like playing the Star Wars Battlefront games when you unlock a Jedi or something and suddenly you have all these extra powers, because your character's already pretty powerful, but when I switched over, Dune, he was doing crazy stuff and he was killing like hundreds of enemies with like a super move and everything. So that was a really cool feature. One thing I don't know is, this is what I have hopes for the full game, is I still want it to be a traditional Dynasty Warriors game. I still want to have the option to play as all of the characters, you know, because right now we've only really seen this nameless hero in Origins. I'm hoping that this nameless hero is only required as part of like a separate story mode, you know, that's the story mode of the game. But then there's going to be other modes like maybe conquest mode or even just free play mode, and then you can choose from all of the other warriors. It seems obvious that they would do it, but I haven't really seen any footage that suggests otherwise. I've only seen this nameless hero, and that's what concerns me. Normally when you play Dynasty Warriors, it's like you have the option of choosing like a different character's campaign or a different clan's campaign. Now in Origins, since you're just following this one character, I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm sure it'll still be good. But like I said, as long as it still has other modes, it still lets us use the other characters independently. We're not just stuck with this one character. And I think a lot of people were saying, if this character in Origins is nameless, why can't we customize this character? Why do we have to use their template if this character is pretty generic and doesn't have a voice or anything like that? So that's just some of my concerns for the full game. That's why I'm just sort of waiting for reviews so we can get more of an insight on what else is part of the package. Part of me thinks it would be silly for them to just release Origins as like a single campaign game. I don't think they would do that unless this is supposed to be like a spin-off, and then Dynasty Warriors 10 is going to be like the more traditional gameplay with all the warriors and all the modes. But I hope that's not true, because I like what I've seen in Origins, and I feel like it should have the complete package. Otherwise, it's not so interesting for me. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if they reveal more details going forward, and you know, I'll keep my eyes out for when the reviews eventually start popping up, because that will determine whether or not I'm going to be that interested in the game. So gameplay wise, I'm very interested. It's just being able to choose other characters, and have some extra modes outside of this nameless character story mode. That's all I'm really looking for. And if they have some kind of online co-op, that would be really nice as well, because Dynasty Warriors always has co-op, so I feel like it's a bit of a necessity by this point. And the only other real thing that happened in the demo was you fight against Lubu, and this part was interesting because he is still really tough in this game. He will destroy you, basically, if you're not careful. Even if you are careful, he's probably still going to destroy you. He's very difficult to beat. You really need to avoid all of his attacks, because he can take you down in like 2 or 3 hits. He's that devastating. And he doesn't just hit you normally, he also has like these magic powers where he can like fire like these big red laser shockwave beams at you. And you know, it's kind of crazy. You know, it's, you know, Dynasty Warriors, they've always had like some kind of crazy element to it, but I don't think I've ever seen like this big magical superpower before. So that was pretty devastating. He was very difficult to defeat. But what I noticed is that when you die, there's actually a checkpoint system in the game, and it lets you rewind, and you can begin the battle at any point. So in previous games, if you died, sorry, but you need to restart the entire map again, the whole battle from scratch. And you know, if you were fighting Lubu at the end and you didn't know how powerful he was, you would feel like you wasted your entire time in that battle, because he would just wipe you out, and then you'd have to start all over again. The battles don't take that long, but still, you know, it's never good. But it lets you go through like a little timeline to like important key points, like different events that happened, different people you defeated, and then you can sort of choose like, okay, I would like to start the battle again, but maybe from like the halfway point, or you know, maybe not quite the beginning but almost at the beginning, or maybe just where Lubu appeared and you can fight him again. So it kind of holds your hand a little bit. It makes it kind of easy, because then death doesn't really mean anything, because you can just respawn basically roughly where you died, really, or just a short moment before it. But you know, it's a cool feature to have. I kind of appreciate it more because I don't have as much time to dedicate towards gaming these days. So you know, anything that can help me get straight back into the action and not waste all my progress, you know, I'm going to welcome that change. So I believe that covers everything that I came across in the demo. So obviously I had a couple of different criticisms, but overall really liked the demo. I'm really optimistic for the full release. Like I said, I just need to know that we can go the other characters, and there's a few other modes that we can sort of play around with. You know, I'm okay if there's only one story mode. I'm okay with that, I don't mind, because the big appeal with Dynasty Warriors was that, you know, you can just play in free mode and just pick any character you want and just like train that character and make them as strong as possible and give them the best weapons, and you can put them in any battle, not just the battles that they were supposed to be in. You can mix and match, and you know, just have fun, especially in co-op. Like that's what I want from Dynasty Warriors. I'm not too bothered about the story, because the story is identical, as you may know, in every single Dynasty Warriors. They follow the same story, almost the same characters, with some new additions every time. So I'm not really playing for the story. By this point I know all of the story like the back of my hand, basically. So that's everything. But yeah, I'm curious to know what you guys thought of the demo. Are you fans of Dynasty Warriors? Have you played any of the spin-offs, and maybe you're going to give Dynasty Warriors Origins a try because of that? Or were you never a fan and you're still not a fan, or did this demo change your mind? Let us know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. and I'll see you guys in the next one.